Hi, everyone. I'm Michelle McLean, your host for Tip Radio Top Industry Professionals, where we showcase wonderful individuals from around the globe just sharing their stories of success and experiences in the industry. Oh my gosh, today we have returning to us Dr. Dan Andreae. You have been a part of IAOTP for so many years. You are in Toronto, Canada. I was able to celebrate the soiree event, the
Yeah.
gala event in Toronto with you guys in 2024. What a beautiful city you live in.
Thank
And
you.
we have to once again just celebrate you on so many levels. You're an honored member of the International Association of Top Professionals for quite some time now. You've also been selected as Top Philanthropist of the Decade, Presidential Award, Humanitarian of the Year, recipient of the International Hero for Education, Man of the Year, Hero of the Year, Visionary of the Year, and the list goes on and on. You were also just celebrated in December at IOTP's annual awards gala in Nashville for your selection as Top Innovation Advisor of the Year, Top Inspirational Mentor of the Year, and Brain Health Advocate of the Year. You have had 2 decades of professional experience in higher education and you've taught at 45 different on 45 different subjects at college and university level as an associate adjunct professor at Renison University College, University of Waterloo, and professor at the University of Gulf Humber. Welcome back to our studio, Dr. Dan Andreae. Wow.
Hi, Michelle. Well, thank you so much. It's a wonderful pleasure to speak to you. And at the outset, I want to say, honestly and sincerely, you are a tremendous inspiration for me because whether you're speaking to groups or leading major conferences, for example, whether you're involved in the, Michelle McLean Charitable Trust in Namibia helping underprivileged children, or whether you're working with a primary school as well, the work you do is so important, and you do it so energetically and passionately. So I have to say, you are a star, absolutely in my books.
Oh gosh, Dan, you're so sweet. We do share a common passion, and that is education.
Yes.
And I've been doing that only for 35 years, but you have gone on, I mean, decades, right? You are all about devoting your life to education and also research with those affected with neurodegenerative diseases. So
Yes.
talk a little bit about that. What got you into that industry besides education? The neuro side is so fascinating.
It absolutely is. And I think as I look back on my career, we look and we see these threads that weave together into a pattern. And so they focus with me on education, healthcare, medicine, and advocacy. All of them tie together beautifully. And it's so important, either in a what I would say preventive sense, to give people information and access to the services they need to take control of their lives and improve their lives, or initiatives that are visionary and in some way have impact directly on the ground so you can actually see the results. And that to me is very, very gratifying, whether it's sponsoring scholarships or involvement in developing programs in healthcare and medicine. It's been an interesting journey. And I can't say I planned it. Anybody who says, and maybe there are some that do, I knew exactly what I wanted to do and it was going to follow a straight line. Not my case. I graduated in psychology, got a master's degree in social work, and then ended up working with an organization that I became director of, and we set up the first, it's still going, its 40th anniversary, the National Eating Disorder Information Center at Toronto Hospital. And it provides people with access and support and services across Canada. And it's the only one that does that to this day in a problem that's a major, major problem, spiked after COVID, for sure, eating disorders, and is still growing, certainly among women, but also among men, for example. So those are the themes that I have tried to develop.
But tell us a little bit more about the neurodegenerative, research that you've done. That
Right.
is so fascinating.
Well, yeah, I started out as the first executive director of the Alzheimer's Society in Toronto. We were the first society formed anywhere in the world. And I got that job not because of an expertise in neurodegenerative diseases, but because I had headed another agency and I had experience. I'd worked at one point, please forgive me for a politician, and understanding how the system works is also very important to moving things ahead. So once I got there, it was a wonderful chance, really from the beginning, to set up programs, a counseling center and resource center, research activities, allied health professional meetings, advocacy. And so I got deeper into the brain and how important it is. There are about 80 billion different neurons that are in our brain working 100% of the time. People think when we're asleep, the brain is probably quiet. Not the case. In fact, during dream sleep or REM sleep, our brain is as active as it is right now between you and me. And so we know that certain things happen in the brain that can cause difficulties. We still don't have a cure for Alzheimer's disease. It was thought at one point the major problem was in terms of plaques and tangles in the brain, and like little gummy things that get between the neurons to stop communication. A lot of research in 40 years has gone into that, but no cure yet. We're making progress, but they're now finding out there are other aspects. Inflammation, for example, can affect the communication in the brain, inflammation in the body, which can affect the brain for sure. And the other thing, it ties in, and I say this to you because everything in the body is tied in so closely to everything else. So, how does sleep affect Alzheimer's disease? Very interesting. Well, the fact is, Michelle, that when we're asleep, the brain toxins that build up during the day, every day, get flushed out by little vacuum cleaners, so to speak, into what's called the lymphatic system and then dealt with. But if we don't get our deep sleep, it's not just hours, but the quality of sleep, then it doesn't work as effectively. And so these toxins can build up. So they're now finding there are other angles to try to understand the cause of Alzheimer's and even other neurodegenerative diseases.
So that leads me to my next question. Someone like me, who's an
Yeah,
insomniac, I
yeah,
hardly sleep. Like most nights, I have 4 or 5 hours sleep. Um,
right. Okay.
and then people would say to me, "But how do you function?" But my body seems to be okay with that amount of sleep. But maybe I'm not getting enough rest.
Well, it's very interesting because there is no set number of hours that we have to sleep. Some people can get by on 5 hours of core sleep, essentially. Some people like George Bush, a former president, or Bill Clinton would do this and be able to do it effectively. Other people, biologically, they're wired this way. They may need 9 or even 10 hours of sleep to feel good. We say 7.5 to 8 hours is the norm, but it's just a number. Okay.
Okay.
Everybody is
So,
different in so many ways.
but so there's no physiological difference. It really is up to the person. So you're saying from a doctor's perspective,
Yeah.
that it really is up to the person's physiology.
Basically so, how we're wired, and we're all wired differently. Now, are you an owl or a lark? Do you get up early in the morning and you're bouncing ahead, or are you somebody who likes to stay up late at night?
I'm both. That's my
Both.
problem.
Okay.
So I'll go to sleep late and I'll get
Yes,
up early, or I'll reverse like I'll stay up till 3 in the morning. And
right.
I'll spend the rest of the day working effectively, but then
Yes.
I'll go to sleep early. And then I'll wake up at 4 o'clock the next morning and I'll be so it's an interesting thing. Do you think psychologically that people are taught, like get your 8 hours of sleep. Otherwise, you're not going to function okay.
Exactly. It's a very, very good point. Culturally, okay, we take these ideas that we're taught and they become sacrosanct. They become something that we compare ourselves to. And if we don't fit into the quote unquote norm, then what's wrong with us? Which causes more stress. But let me add something else here. It's wonderful you can do that. And obviously there's no deleterious effects at all with that. Now, I don't want to get too personal here, but what about nutrition and exercise, stress management? And how do those fit into your life, if I can ask? Because they're equally important in terms of our health and brain health.
Well, absolutely. I agree with you. I take that into account. So, exercise I have to do every day. I live with a professional sportsman, right? Or
Right. Yeah.
a goalkeeper for Man United. So, he
Yeah.
exercises every day. He's religious about that. He's just good at exercising. So, I try and follow along. I think what is different, and many for many of our members as well, we live
Yes.
in different time zones
Mhm.
around the globe.
Yeah.
So part of my business, my people in Namibia are waking up 6 hours ahead of me. So
Right.
I start my morning at 4 o'clock in the morning dealing with like their day. And then
Right.
towards the end of the day, I'm still dealing with Los Angeles, who's
Right. Okay.
3 hours behind me. So I'll
Right.
have a maybe 17-hour day of time difference.
Yes.
And I think so. So, what can you say to our members to help them? Like, there might be somebody in Australia who deals with, Los Angeles. Not it's a 12-hour difference, no, maybe more. It's almost a 24-hour difference. What would
Right.
you say to them?
Well, it can be difficult. Of course, we have something called circadian rhythms. It's about a 24-hour rhythm, that our body responds to all the time. And what you want to do as much as possible is to coordinate that rhythm. In the old days, I say the old days, before electric lights were invented by Edison, we naturally got up with the sun and went to bed when it got dark. And then, of course, life changed dramatically with of course, globalization and all the pressures and everything that are occurring. Can I ask a question too? Do you go to sleep at the same time each night? Do you get a schedule like to bed at 10 or 10:30? Ever? Or
Never.
never? Okay. Because well, that everybody's so individual in that sense. Normally they say to pick a time when you go to bed, let's say 10:30, and try to keep to that schedule so you can train your body and the circadian rhythm to acclimatize to that. And that's a very important thing too, as well as when you go to sleep to make sure that the temperature in the room is appropriate, that it's very dark. You close the drapes. There's not a lot of blue light hanging around, to
Yeah.
distract you, from a cell phone or whatever else. So there are certain techniques we can do to have a wind down period before you go to bed. Maybe have a warm bath, have a glass of milk or something, or warm milk, which can help you to sleep. So there's certain techniques in there. We go on for an hour about that. But to realize that sleep, they've said, is probably the most important spoke in the center of the wheel of health, which has been a new finding, really, certainly in the last maybe 15, 20 years.
And we're talking about mental health very importantly. So I recognize I need to really, recreate my schedule in my life because, as you say, putting your computer on or your phone or watching a movie before you sleep is
Yes.
not going to help you relax. You need to have that candle, a little bit of meditation, a little bit of quiet time. But tell me a little bit more about exercises, you as an educator, but exercises
Yeah.
people can do in their progressive years to
Yes.
stimulate the brain to keep it going strong.
Right, to create certain chemicals in the brain that will actually strengthen, the neuronal connection, certainly. The key thing about exercise, again, everybody's different, is movement. And so many people think I have to go to the gym and spend my hour and a half. And for some people, that's great. But if you like gardening, if you like walking, if you play golf or go bowling or tennis or whatever, that is equally okay. And so it's important to understand what works for you. But the whole thing is not to be sedentary, because when you're sedentary, it has negative effects on brain function too as well. So get the blood flowing, okay, brings oxygen to the brain, and other benefits too as well. Plus the idea of stimulating your brain through games, through learning, and that brings us to education. So we can move to education for a second, Michelle, on this. And we learn all the time. I was thinking of this morning before our talk, is that education happens all the time. We can learn in a school, okay, or in a community college, but we also learn in seminars, conferences, the media, talking to friends, for example. Many, many ways we're constantly expanding our mind potentially. And so what is education really? It's something we engage in all the time. And certainly in our world today, because it's moving so quickly and accelerating so dramatically in terms of technology and in every profession, we now have to keep up, okay, with new developments all the time. When I'm teaching or taught, what I taught kids 5 years ago may be out of fashion today or being proven wrong. I mean, if we looked at the brain 30 years ago, you would have learned in class the brain was fixed. Okay, what you had at a certain point in life was immutable. You couldn't change it. Now that's been turned entirely on its head. We know that in many parts of the brain there's brain plasticity, and you can actually increase the connections in your brain. We know if people have a stroke, for example, they can learn to compensate, in certain parts of the brain for other functions lost. So there's a whole variety of things we are discovering all the time. So learning is important, but with education, why go to university? Good question. People want to learn skills and they want to get a job. Okay. So for
Right.
me, the reason for education in a formal setting goes about really differentiating between facts and information, knowledge and understanding. Let's say, oh, you're in history class and the teacher talks about a treaty between two countries. So you go on your cell phone. Most of my students would do that instantly, right? And find, oh, the treaty between France and Austria. Oh, okay, that's information, right? And so what is knowledge? Well, knowledge would be a step beyond that and say, well, who were these countries? Okay. And why was this treaty even developed? That's a step, to a deeper understanding. But understanding is really looking then and saying, okay, this treaty's here, but what are the consequences of it? Okay, how did it affect the world? How did it advance, okay, our understanding of politics or whatever? And that brings in the whole concept, and I put it in stars here, critical thinking, the ability to take an idea and to deconstruct it or think about it in deep ways that also connect up to other things too as well. When we look at the body, for example, and we see certain parts of the body, how do they work together? What is the connection between the hormonal system, our immune system, and our brain? Because they're all chattering to each other instantaneously all the time. And so understanding it at a greater depth to, let's say, the root cause of health problems, but also social problems. Because when we talk about health, it's often in an anatomical and physiological way, but recognize that health has to do with your genetics to a degree. Not as much as we think, by the way. Most of the issues are lifestyle, derived. Absolutely. And so, we know that social conditions, social determinants of health are so important. Whether you have an education, a job, whether you live in a polluted area, whether there's crime around where you're living, are there opportunities? Those are equally important in determining one's health and not just focusing on one part of a body, but to understand the connections, not just within our body, but within our whole life and our lifestyles and our environments are so important.
I love what you're talking about because it is about the holistic approach to life. Everything, physiological, psychological, emotional, it's all connected and spiritual. I
Right,
really
absolutely.
feel that. And working in the underserved communities in Africa, I see that. The kids with a sense of no hope, no future. You can see that their physicality is affected by the fact that they don't feel like they have a future or they have opportunities. And
Right.
that's huge. So, you were talking about education, how it's changed over the years, and I've witnessed that over the last 35 years with
You
my
share,
primary school.
you share with us. Yeah, yeah.
How do we as educators or leaders in the education realm, how do we change the fact that we can't teach kids the way we did at the turn of the century? We cannot educate them the same way. How do we change that mindset?
It's very hard because back then it was very rote. For example, you came to a class and the teacher talked and that was really it. Yeah, or exactly. Pay attention. But now, of course, I found that students want to be entertained. It has to be relevant to them. There's so many methodologies, for sharing information. With technologies, it's incredible what you can do. AI now is playing a big role in all of this too as well. So we have to adapt, and it's very, very hard. For me, if I had to say, thinking back in teaching, the one thing that was so important to reaching students, knowing we'll never reach everybody, is to create a safe environment in the classroom. So it's even biologically proven. There's something called, without getting too technical about it, the vagus nerve. It's the 10th nerve in the body. It goes from your gut, for example, all around your body, heart, gut, etc., up to the brain. And it's also the nerve that reduces our stress and opens us up, so to speak. There are techniques you can use to actually work with students to encourage, the vagal nerve stimulation. But that's another topic, maybe another day. The
But that's,
point is,
that's interesting because when people historically talk about, I feel it in my gut, like
yeah,
this is a gut instinct, this is a gut decision, but it's
yeah.
it's connected, it's connected to the heart and the brain.
Absolutely. The gut is the second brain, and your gut feelings are real. You need to have a combination of your cognitive reasoning skills and the gut, but you have to remember that only 1% of us is us. 99% are our microbes, the trillions and trillions of microbes in our gut that are constantly communicating with other systems and the brain. For example, 70% of your immune system is in your gut patches. But yeah, or 80% of your serotonin, which is a feel-good hormone, it's not up here. It's down there in the gut.
Absolutely. I've done so much research on that. Talking together with my husband on stress, talking to
Yes,
people
yes,
about stress, dealing with stress, and where that serotonin is, it's so important. It's coming from your gut and
yes.
it's affecting your brain. So, I mean, we could talk about this forever, Dan. Honestly, our members have always been fascinated by you, and we continue to be fascinated by you. But I recently heard that
Yes.
are you a sponsor in a huge congress in Toronto? It's an
Well,
historic
I'm going to play a
humanity and social sciences congress.
Yeah, it's the 94th Congress held in Canada, and it brings together people in humanities, academics, really, humanities and social sciences. And this year, the focus is on the future of education. And so again, we know it's multifaceted, right? And everybody has a different perspective, but how do you bring these together? So the first year ever is going to be held at a community college in Toronto called George Brown College, not far from where I am right now. And it's a very exciting possibility, again, to look at where we're going to be going, the things you and I already talked about. And so I'm looking forward to that and in May. And again, it's a networking opportunity, but again, to look at the different perspectives, the biological, sociological, anthropological, cultural, all these different things tie together. There isn't one answer. And I think so often in life, what we do, Michelle, is not you and I, but other people maybe, maybe not. Look for a linear answer. Look for a linear connection. This causes this. But that is much too simplistic. It has to be looked at in a holistic, integrated way. And so that's where the issue, and I think they're going to address this in the conference, the silos that get created among different disciplines, as people build their own empires, let's say. And even then, there are divisions and segmentation within these different silos. So it's hard to get people to open up and dialogue and agree, to be honest with you. Have to be frank about that.
Well, I think that sort of would lead me to the next question. As a member of IAOTP, I'm always fascinated by what you do. You're walking encyclopedia. I mean, there's just there's never a short conversation with you. There's always so much more to discover. What would you say? So from this Congress, what would your the what would you like to achieve from this Congress worldwide with all these different people involved?
Yes, I mean 10,000 in Toronto and millions across the world, tuning into to various seminars and lectures that way. I think it would be to understand the role of each kind of academic institution. You have a university, which is targeted on certain things and disciplines. Community colleges that are more practical in some ways, combine theory with apprenticeships and practice, and what are called polytechnics, which also play a big role. So really to encourage an understanding of the benefits and contributions of each of these different levels, because they each have something majorly to offer students. And so getting people to talk, getting them to communicate, which really is the end result of anything. Anything we do, whether it's in science or the arts or in charities, it's all about people. And it's all about connecting with people and really connecting at a deep level, if we can. That's what it's all about. And nobody's an island. And I throw this out. We all need mentors. I had we're still friends. She's 91. And she was a graduate school supervisor of mine, Dr. Eva Phillip in Toronto. We stayed in touch, but she was so important to me at that time when I was struggling. I was wondering where I would go. And she was a rock, for me. We all need these mentors. And I say to students, seek out a mentor. Students say, "Oh, I don't want to approach you, Dr. Dan, because you're so busy." No, I love to be able to help. And you mentioned, can I get back to, I don't want to interrupt you, but back to stress, and how important that is. I was speaking at the 50th anniversary of the Psychology Foundation of Canada recently. It was Strong Minds, Strong Kids is their theme. And a lot of it is preventive, just at a very young age, 3, 4, 5, to teach the kids and adolescents the skills that they need to regulate their feelings, to reduce their stress, because stress is everywhere. We all suffer from it. And if you can nip it in the bud early on, our bodies are so beautifully constructed to deal with acute stress or immediate stress, whether it's an exam or we're writing or jumping away from a car that's coming toward us. No problem at all. The problem is when we don't rest between stressful times and instances, that's when chronic stress builds up. And that leads to physical, psychological, mental, and spiritual issues. So you want to get there early to help them when these skills will last a lifetime.
That is so important, Dan. Yeah, you talked about the strong minds, strong kids psychology, and you've been doing that philanthropy work for, I don't know, decades now.
Mm.
So tell us, how do we, as parents, how do we, as educators, teach people to really regulate their own stress levels for their health, benefit of their health? It's not just like don't be so stressed.
Yeah.
Don't worry about this. How do you, like, what mechanisms do you use, especially with the work that you do?
Again, to me, it's all about the acceptance. Okay. So you say to the kids, stress is normal. They're going to feel stressed, and even get them to talk about situations where they are stressed and recognize that is normal. Occasionally, I'll say in a class, is anybody here not stressed? A few hands. Well, I'm never stressed, sir. No. Well, they're not telling the truth. They are. So it's normalizing the fact that we are stressed, and accepting our feelings too as well, because I find a lot of kids will say, or students will say, I shouldn't be stressed. It's wrong to be stressed. What that means I'm weak, if I'm stressed. Just the opposite. In fact, the paradox is you move beyond it by acknowledging it and accepting it. And
Mm,
you
mm,
teach the techniques after that. And to recognize again, for me, education is always a meeting of the head and the heart. It's
right.
never just you know, above the head. When I'm with students, they come in and they're coming in with their hopes and aspirations and their goals and also their doubts and fears, apprehensions. You're dealing with a person. And so education is not just about intellectual development. That's part of it. It's also about human and personal development. They are linked like two wings of an airplane, in my view.
Well, you're such a breath of fresh air when you talk about that because I come from a background of not having any degrees or anything from a university. I never got to go there. I did the work from a model as a young girl, right?
Yeah.
So it's all been about creating careers as I go along through people. So would you say like, there's so many different ways that people can be educated. Do you think it's not just about diplomas and degrees? It's also about life experience.
I couldn't agree more on that. And our society tends to adulate, academic achievement per se. It's how we base our system in certain parts, certain ways. But no, basically, there are many kinds of intelligences. Somebody can be very good in math or music or in writing, but we're not equally good in all of them or talented in all of them. And I think having the personal skills, the EQ, the emotional quotient is the most important thing of all. And honestly, I think the ability to relate to people, to empathize with people, to bring people together is the cornerstone of success. Because ultimately, it's reaching people no matter who they are, what their backgrounds are, because you're reaching and connecting with their humanity, not an aspect necessarily just of their intellectual prowess. And people end up looking for models, for example, and statistics and everything to back up arguments. It can be helpful, but not sufficient. It's all about the person, how they relate to themselves, their self-esteem, their self-confidence. And if you can give that to people, which you do, by the way, that is the greatest gift that I think anybody can give in this world.
Oh, that's amazing that you say that because a lot of stress, and I've seen that with my own son, he's now 25, and I've got three other stepchildren.
Yeah.
I saw the most stress in their life coming from that expectation that they thought from society that they had to achieve a certain level or whatever it might be academically to be
Yes.
recognized as worthy in society. And I think what you're going to do with this Congress, and I'd love to join you. So I'm gonna
Oh,
ring your doorbell and I'm gonna definitely try
yeah.
and be there.
Yeah. Is that your son Luke, by the way? Is that your son Luke by
Yes,
name? Yeah.
yes.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah. Okay. What's he doing today? Can I ask that? What's he?
Well, he worked with Tesla, and then he
Oh,
decided he wanted to be closer to Florida, closer home. He's got
yeah.
a fiance who's also from Florida.
Okay.
But he's actually working with a robotics company and goes once a month to England for a few days for work. So
Oh,
he's got
fantastic.
himself in a good position. But I have to say he's always a great achiever, but
Yeah.
there's always that next level stress is, I'm not as great as the next MIT guy from
Right.
China. and there's always that stress.
Of course, the comparisons we all do, okay, that way. And if you want to get right down to the core of it, he's fine or everybody's fine the way they are. Okay. We think we have to achieve something to then get the recognition, the success that others will give us. But ultimately, if people can give it to us, they can take it away from us. So it comes down to ourselves and our own self-esteem and around self-care, how important it is to focus on oneself. And you can really only give to people if you are also looking after yourself. But can I speak about robotics for a second here? What loops into quickly? It was a few years ago in Toronto here that I heard about something called the Da Vinci robot. And I thought, not in my wheelhouse at all. And I thought, but robotics and robotic surgery, seems to be the future. So anyway, I went around in the hospital sector. The UHN, by the way, which is the University Health Network, consists of Toronto General, Princess Margaret Cancer Hospital, the Western, the Rehab Center, was named by Newsweek as the third best hospital in the world. Okay. So they're doing fantastic work here. But when I would go around and I would talk to people in the field of medicine, whatever health, they'd say, don't do it. I mean, after all, it costs a lot of money. People have other priorities here. The government in Canada, different healthcare system isn't going to pay for it. So forget about it. Wow, that didn't strike me as being a very good idea. So I eventually did put up a philanthropic amount to begin the process. Once somebody takes a lead, and you may have found this too, all of a sudden other people come forward. The Da Vinci robot was bought, okay, and then my sister and I, Trish Hornsby, said, "Well, people have to be trained, in this thing." So we founded and sponsored the first ever in Canada Robotic Training Academy at the Michener Institute, which is part of the UHN. And it's up and running now, and they can eventually do remote surgeries, etc. But let me give you a quick example here. There's a doctor here called Dr. Yasafuku. He's a lung surgeon, or surgeon, and he is world famous. Anyway, he told me a woman came to me recently, and she needed lung surgery. She'd been to several surgeons, Michelle, around the city, and they told her that they'd have to cut her from the spine to the front. And she said, "But I know, Dr. Yasafuku, that you are an amazing surgeon, thoracic surgeon. You can do it by making an incision, maybe an inch long." Anyway, long story short, he worked on her. He got it. He dealt with her, and he did it by using the Da Vinci robot. The advantages of that, Michelle, are very small incisions, and as a result, much less blood loss, much less infection, much less recidivism coming back to hospital again, quicker times and less time in hospital per se. Healthier recovery, absolutely. That's the future. And we're just beginning to understand what that's about in terms of the applications of all these. So that excites me, and to have created that, honestly, with my sister has been one of my premier achievements. Again, you see the results right away. There was a woman who, I don't know who she is, but she wrote me an email. And I guess in the surgery department, she'd seen a plaque or whatever, up there with my name on it. And she said, "My husband now is in the Da Vinci surgical unit. And I'm so appreciative of what is going to happen because of this technology in terms of his recovery and being cured. And so thank you." But it's people say to me, well, we all have our failures too, don't get me wrong, but we have our successes. And people say, "What's your greatest success?" And I can't really answer that in terms of one particular thing, but I can tell you it's letters like that, where you reach somebody and you've changed a life. Or when a student will say to me, "Because of your class," and I came to it, no, "Because of your class, I've changed my career. Thank you so much. You've opened my eyes." It's those, I get goosebumps talking to you now. I'm really serious
Me
about
too.
that's, yeah, you do. Yeah, I feel it. It's what life's about, or should be about, at the very core of it all. However one can contribute in many different ways. however you can do it, it's going to make the world a better place.
Well, that's a wonderful way to end our conversation, Dan. I could speak with you for, until the cows come home because it's
Uh,
always so enjoyable.
yeah.
And that was the last question I was going to ask you is what was the highlight of your career? You've been on so many magazine covers and interviews and discussions in media around the world and on the Nashville billboard again for IAOTP this year. I mean,
Yes, yes.
but what, just what in your heart you say is the highlight really of your life and your career?
Um, yeah, I became a bit of a country music fan, by the way. I didn't think of myself at all until I went into the the clubs, and I was kind of hooked anyway on that. Okay, it would depend on what sector. I mean, certainly the teaching sector was a big one. Being the first director of the Alzheimer's Society was huge in terms of at that time nobody knew how to spell it. So to really help caregivers and patients. I would say helping to start NETIC, the Eating Disorders Center. I'm chair of their advisory committee today. Absolutely. I'm supporting a program in Canada for brain researchers, along with the Weizmann Institute of Science and Brain Canada, to end up supporting academics in neuroscience of all aspects of the discipline that wouldn't necessarily be funded by a university, but have amazing hypotheses to test. So that would be another one. Yeah, the robotic program I mentioned. I just created a chair at the UHN at the Michener, which is the Dr. Daniel C. Andreae Chair of Transformational Healthcare Education, which is going to, I think, make a major impact beyond the scope of our talk today. Running workshops and speakers up in Sudbury, Ontario. It's a town about 4 hours away. I thought of doing something here in Toronto, but there's so much happening here in a big city that really to help people in other communities and expose them to speakers who could help them. And I could talk a lot about that, except that it's always been an amazing experience. They'll get 900 people out on a February night. Now, for my American friends, let's just say Sudbury would be like a Minnesota night in the middle of February. But they bring out 900 people to hear speakers inspirationally offering their wisdom, whether it's athletes or Norman Doidge, who wrote the book about the plastic brain, whatever. Just to do that is exciting. So there isn't one necessary thing I can say, but they all tie into the themes I talked about: healthcare, education, advocacy. That that really stimulate me.
Well, I can't wait to get you to Namibia to meet
I would love to.
my people, my government, the Ministry of Education.
Yes.
They're trying to be so progressive in a third world country, and they're doing so well. And I'm a huge supporter of that. So I will get
Wonderful.
you to come to have a nice safari in
Oh
Namibia.
my gosh, that's incredible. And you're again, I started up by saying how inspirational you are, but you are a big motivator and inspiration to people in Namibia too. I know that. And so you're going to keep it up because that's you.
Thanks, Dan. Well, you keep me inspired. I'm not going to come to Sub-Zero Toronto
Oh,
anytime
no.
soon. You're welcome to come to Florida and visit me.
There's no comparison. I'd rather choose Florida. It's true. Beautiful country here in Canada, but not, it depends, I guess. A lot of skiing here, snowmobilers, but I prefer the sun. Anyway,
Well,
uh,
I look
thank you
forward to
so much.
seeing you soon again. And for all of our members who are so fascinated and just inspired by you, how do they get hold of you?
Really, the best way is the old-fashioned way of emailing me. And that would be Dan, D-A-N dot Andre, Andreae, at Simpatico, Sympatico dot ca. Dan.Andre, Simpatico.ca. Any thoughts or opposing views or whatever, it's all fine. Love to hear from anybody.
Oh, that's wonderful, Dan. Thank you for the amazing conversation we had today. I love
Uh,
you so
Always
much.
love it. It's inspirational, and thank you so much. Take care.
Thank
Bye.